I always thought our marriage was unshakable. Sarah and I had built a life together, raising our children in a home filled with laughter, dreams, and the kind of partnership I had once believed could weather any storm. But lately, something had shifted. At first, it was subtle, small changes that might have gone unnoticed if I wasn't so attuned to her every movement. It began with her distance, a kind of emotional chasm that hadn't been there before. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly now felt stilted, as though she was holding back. When I asked about her day, her answers were clipped, her smile thin. I told myself it was stress from work, an innocent explanation for her distraction. Then there were the late nights. Sarah started attending meetings that stretched well beyond dinner, coming home with excuses that didn't quite add up. One evening, I noticed a faint scent of cologne that wasn't mine clinging to her blouse. I wanted to believe her story about an overcrowded elevator, but the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. The tipping point came on an ordinary Saturday morning. Sarah had left for one of her meetings, and I was tidying up the kitchen when I found it, a receipt tucked carelessly in her purse. Dinner for two at an upscale restaurant I'd never heard of, dated just 2 nights ago. The memory of that evening struck me like a physical blow. She had told me she was working late, leaving me at home with the kids. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it a work dinner? A friend? I wanted to confront her immediately, but a part of me wasn't ready to hear the truth. Instead, I found myself spiraling, replaying the years of our marriage in my head. We had shared so much. First dates, first homes, the birth of our children. I thought of our vows, the promises we made to each other. Where had it all gone wrong? I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment when the cracks began to show, but they were there, glaring and undeniable. That night, I lay awake in bed, listening to Sarah's steady breathing beside me. I turned the receipt over in my hand, the weight of it far heavier than the thin strip of paper should have been. Was I overthinking it? Or had I been blind to the truth staring me in the face? The next day, I started noticing more. Her phone, once left casually on the coffee table, was now glued to her hand, the screen always angled away from me. She laughed at messages I couldn't see, her smile private, as if it belonged to someone else. The disconnect between us grew, a silent but tangible barrier. I tried to rationalize, to convince myself it was nothing. But the more I tried, the more the doubt consumed me. I wasn't just losing my wife, I was losing the life we had built together. For the first time in years, I felt powerless. My heart ached with a mixture of denial and dread as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Sarah wasn't just distant, she was hiding something, and I was determined to find out what. Doubt is a silent poison. It eats away at your sanity, turning every smile into a question and every silence into an accusation. By the time I decided to take action, I had spent weeks drowning in my own thoughts. Sarah's behavior grew increasingly erratic, and I knew I couldn't live in limbo any longer. It wasn't an easy decision. I had always prided myself on being a man of trust. Trust was the foundation of our marriage, or so I thought. But as much as I hated the idea of spying on my wife, the alternative was worse. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. That's how I found myself sitting across from a private investigator, a woman named Chloe with sharp eyes and an air of quiet confidence. She came highly recommended, though the idea of hiring someone to trail my wife felt like a betrayal in itself. "You're sure about this?" she asked, her pen poised over a notepad. I hesitated, staring at the worn leather of her office chair. Was I sure? No, but I was desperate. "I just need to know the truth," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. Chloe nodded, her expression neutral. She had probably heard it all before. Husbands, wives, all grappling with the same gut-wrenching suspicions. She didn't offer false reassurance, only a promise to find the answers I was too afraid to uncover myself. The next few days were a blur of anxiety. Every time Sarah left the house, I wondered if Chloe was following her. I imagined her snapping photos, gathering evidence, piecing together a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted completed. Guilt weighed heavily on me. I hated myself for doubting Sarah, for invading her privacy. But every time I thought about the receipt, the perfume, the late nights, the guilt was eclipsed by a deeper need for clarity. When Chloe finally called me, my heart sank. "I have something," she said simply, her voice calm but firm. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. She slid an envelope across the table, her expression unreadable. "I think it's best if you look at these in private," she said. But I couldn't wait. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope, pulling out a stack of glossy photos. The first one hit me like a punch to the gut. Sarah, sitting at an outdoor table with a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Photo after photo told the same story. Dinners, walks in the park, even a kiss outside a hotel. The man, Chloe explained, was named Alex, a con artist with a long history of charming his way into women's lives. I stared at the photos, my vision blurring. This was it. The truth I had been seeking, laid bare in stark detail. There was no denying it now. Sarah wasn't just distant. She was unfaithful. Chloe's voice broke through my haze. "I'm sorry, Mark," she said softly. "I know this isn't easy." I nodded, unable to speak. The betrayal was more than I could bear, a searing pain that cut deeper than I thought possible. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but nothing could have prepared me for the reality. That night, I sat alone in my car, the photos spread out on the passenger seat. I stared at them, at the undeniable evidence of Sarah's affair. My mind raced with questions I didn't have the answers to. How long had this been going on? What did he have that I didn't? I thought about confronting her, about throwing the photos on the table and demanding an explanation. But something stopped me. I needed a plan, a way to take control of a situation that had spiraled far beyond my grasp. As I drove home, one thought consumed me. I couldn't let this break me. For the sake of my children, for the sake of the life I had built, I had to stay strong. But deep down, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. There's a strange calm that comes when you know your life is about to change. The storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, heartbreak, had already battered me. By the time I decided to confront Sarah and Alex, I felt almost detached, as if I were watching someone else's life unfold. The setting mattered. I didn't want to confront them in a way that could spiral out of control. A high-end restaurant felt right, public enough to ensure their civility, intimate enough to make every word sting. So, I made a reservation, choosing a table with a perfect view of where they typically sat. Chloe's reports had been meticulous. I arrived early, my heart pounding despite the mask of composure I wore. The restaurant buzzed with the hum of conversation, clinking glasses, and the faint strains of a piano. I scanned the room and saw their table, a cozy spot near the window, the same one captured in Chloe's photos. Sarah and Alex arrived 15 minutes later. I watched them from my seat, my breath catching in my throat. She looked radiant, laughing as Alex pulled out her chair. I hadn't seen her smile like that in years. It felt like a slap in the face. Memories of happier times flooded my mind, our honeymoon in Santorini, where we'd promised to always put each other first, the nights we stayed up late, dreaming about our future, the first time she held our son, her eyes filled with tears of joy. How had we gone from that to this? They didn't notice me at first. Sarah leaned forward, her hand brushing Alex's as they talked. He was charming, I'd give him that. His polished demeanor, the way he leaned in just slightly as she spoke, made it clear why she was drawn to him. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This wasn't just about Sarah's betrayal, it was about reclaiming my dignity. I stood, smoothing my jacket, and made my way toward their table. The moment Sarah saw me, her laughter froze. Her eyes widened in shock, her hand instinctively pulling away from Alex's. He turned to face me, his confident smirk faltering under my gaze. "Mark," Sarah stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't stop on my account," I said, my tone calm but firm. I pulled out a chair and sat down, my movements deliberate. "I thought I'd join you. After all, it seems we have a lot to discuss." The color drained from Sarah's face. Alex, on the other hand, tried to recover his composure. "I'm not sure what you think this is," he began, his voice smooth but edged with unease. I held up a hand, silencing him. "Oh, I know exactly what this is, Alex. But let's not pretend. We're all adults here, aren't we?" Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for her glass of water. "Mark, I can explain." "Explain." I cut her off, my voice still steady. "Explain what, Sarah?" "That you've been sneaking around with a man who preys on women? That you've been lying to me, to our children?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't let it deter me. I turned my attention to Alex. "And you?" I said, my voice dropping to a lethal calm. "Do you think you're untouchable? That you can walk into people's lives and destroy them without consequence?" Alex opened his mouth to respond, but I leaned forward, cutting him off. "Don't bother. I know who you are. I know what you are. And I've got the proof to back it up." The silence at the table was deafening. Other diners were beginning to notice, their conversations faltering as they glanced in our direction. Sarah looked at me, her expression a mixture of guilt and panic. "Mark, please." I stood, sliding a file across the table. "This is everything I've gathered on you, Alex. Fraud, manipulation, it's all in there. If you're smart, you'll disappear before I take this to the authorities." Alex's confidence shattered in an instant. He grabbed the file, flipping through the pages with shaking hands. Sarah buried her face in her hands, her sobs muffled. I straightened my jacket, my voice calm but unyielding. "You made your choices, Sarah. Now you have to live with them." With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant. The weight of the confrontation lifted off my shoulders. But as I stepped into the cool night air, the pain remained, a deep, aching wound that no amount of dignity could erase. The night after the confrontation felt endless. I sat in the dim light of the living room, staring at the clock as it ticked away the seconds. Sarah wasn't home yet. Maybe she wouldn't come back at all. I didn't know which outcome I dreaded more. When the front door finally creaked open, I didn't look up. I could hear her quiet footsteps, the sound of her purse being set down, and then the hesitant clearing of her throat. "Mark," she began, her voice trembling. "Don't," I cut her off, my tone sharp but controlled. "Not yet. Sit down." She hesitated but eventually sank into the armchair across from me. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen. For a moment, I felt a pang of something close to pity. But then I reminded myself of the betrayal, the lies, the deceit, the man she had chosen over me. I tossed the file onto the coffee table between us. "You want to explain?" "Start with this." Sarah stared at the folder, her hands clenching in her lap. "I didn't know," she whispered. "About Alex, I mean. I didn't know what he was. But you knew what you were doing," I snapped, the bitterness in my voice surprising even me. "You knew you were lying to me, to our kids. You knew you were throwing away everything we built." Her tears spilled over, and she buried her face in her hands. "I made a mistake," she choked out. I was lonely, Mark. You were so busy with work, and I felt invisible." "Invisible?" I repeated, incredulous. "Do you have any idea how hard I've worked for this family? For you? And this is how you repay me?" Her sobs grew louder, but I couldn't stop. The words poured out, years of frustration and heartbreak boiling to the surface. "Do you know what it's like to find out your wife has been sneaking around with a con artist? To see photos of her laughing with another man while I'm at home taking care of our children?" Sarah looked up, her face streaked with tears. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said softly. "Well, congratulations," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've succeeded." For a moment, we sat in silence, the weight of everything hanging heavy in the air. Finally, I leaned back, my voice calmer but no less firm. "Alex is gone. He knows I'll take everything I have to the police if he doesn't disappear. But that doesn't change what you've done." Sarah flinched, her hands twisting together. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this," she said desperately. "I'll go to therapy. I'll earn your trust back. Please, Mark, don't give up on us." I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "Us? Do you honestly think there's an us after this? You didn't just betray me, Sarah. You betrayed our family." Her sobs filled the room again, but this time, I didn't feel anything. The anger had burned itself out, leaving behind only a cold, hollow ache. I stood, walking to the door and opening it. "I need you to leave," I said quietly. Sarah looked up at me, her eyes wide with shock. "Mark, please." "Go," I repeated, my voice firmer. "I need time. And so do you. If you're serious about fixing this, start by figuring out who you are without Alex. Without me." She hesitated, but eventually she stood and walked toward the door. As she passed me, she paused, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. When the door closed behind her, the silence was deafening. I sat back down, staring at the empty armchair where she had been. The weight of everything crashed down on me all at once. The betrayal, the confrontation, the painful realization that the life I had known was gone. But amidst the pain, there was a glimmer of something else, resolve. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control what came next. And for my children, for myself, I would find a way to move forward. The house felt impossibly quiet after Sarah left, the kind of quiet that lets every thought, every memory, scream in your mind. I sat on the couch for what felt like hours, staring at nothing, replaying every moment of the confrontation and everything that led up to it. Her words lingered. I was lonely. I wanted to be angry, to rage at her for daring to feel alone when I had poured so much of myself into our family. But underneath the anger was something I wasn't ready to face, an inkling that maybe, just maybe, I had failed, too. I shook off the thought, focusing instead on what lay ahead. The betrayal was her choice, not mine. I had been here, present, working tirelessly for our life together. Yet here I was, picking up the pieces of a marriage shattered by her actions. I got up and walked to the kitchen, my feet moving on autopilot. The faint hum of the refrigerator was the only sound as I poured myself a glass of water, the cold liquid grounding me. On the counter, a crayon drawing caught my eye. It was from our youngest, Mia, a crude but heartfelt picture of our family, smiling and holding hands. My chest tightened as I ran my fingers over the paper. Whatever had happened between Sarah and me, the kids deserved better than to be collateral damage. They deserved stability, love, and the assurance that their father would always be there for them. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The pain was still there, raw and unyielding, but I couldn't let it consume me. I had responsibilities, and wallowing in self-pity wouldn't help anyone. I started by establishing a routine. Mornings were for breakfast and school drop-offs, evenings for homework and bedtime stories. The kids needed normalcy, and so did I. Each task, no matter how mundane, became an anchor, a reminder that life goes on, even when it feels like your world has ended. At work, I threw myself into projects, staying late to keep my mind occupied. My colleagues noticed the change, but didn't pry, for which I was grateful. I wasn't ready to share my story, to explain why my wedding ring now sat in a drawer instead of on my finger. Driving home one evening, I found myself replaying the confrontation at the restaurant. Alex's smirk, Sarah's tears, the stunned silence of the other diners. It all felt surreal, like a scene from someone else's life. But it was my life, and I had to own it. I pulled into the driveway, pausing before getting out of the car. The house loomed ahead, its warm light spilling onto the lawn. Inside were two little lives that depended on me. They didn't know the full story yet, only that Mommy was taking a break. I dreaded the day when they would ask more questions, but for now, I was grateful for their innocence. That night, as I tucked them into bed, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Mia clung to her stuffed rabbit, her sleepy voice mumbling, "I love you, Daddy," as her eyelids fluttered shut. It was a simple moment, but it reminded me why I couldn't afford to falter. After they were asleep, I sat at the dining table with a notebook in front of me. I started making lists, practical things like bills and schedules, but also personal goals, reconnecting with friends, picking up hobbies I had abandoned years ago, finding a way to heal not just for the kids but for myself. As I wrote, a sense of determination took root. I couldn't undo the past, but I could shape the future. Sarah's choices had brought us here, but my choices would determine where we went next. I wasn't naive. I knew the road ahead would be hard. There would be days when the anger and sadness threatened to overwhelm me, moments when I would question whether I could do this alone. But I also knew I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. Sarah had made her bed. Whether or not she found a way to redeem herself was up to her. My focus had to be on the people who mattered most, Mia, Caleb, and myself. That night, as I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It was faint, like the first light of dawn breaking through the darkness, but it was there. For the first time since everything fell apart, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, we would be okay. I didn't hear from Sarah for the first few days after she left. Part of me was relieved. Her absence gave me space to focus on the kids and myself. But late at night, when the house was quiet, I found myself wondering where she was, what she was doing, and whether she was thinking about what she had done to us. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah. "I've started therapy. I'm trying to figure things out. Please let me know how the kids are doing." I stared at the message for a long time. Therapy. It was a step in the right direction, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Words felt inadequate, and honestly, I didn't know what to say. Over the weeks that followed, Sarah sent more messages. Some were updates on her therapy sessions, while others were apologies that felt more like confessions. She admitted to feeling unfulfilled in our marriage, but insisted that it was never about me. It was my own insecurities, she wrote. Alex just made me feel seen. Seen. That word stung more than I cared to admit, but I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to engage, and I didn't owe her that. Not yet. Through mutual friends, I learned that Sarah had moved in with her sister. She wasn't working and spent most of her days attending therapy and journaling. One friend mentioned that Sarah had started volunteering at a local shelter, something she hadn't done in years. She's trying, Mark, the friend said gently. Trying. It wasn't enough to erase the pain, but it was something. One day, I came home to find an envelope in the mail. Inside were handwritten letters addressed to me and the kids. I hesitated before opening mine, bracing myself for whatever words Sarah had chosen to put on paper. Mark, it began. I know I've hurt you in ways I can never fully make up for. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm working on myself. Not just for you, but for the kids and for me. I've spent a lot of time looking at old photos, remembering the life we built together. It was beautiful, and I destroyed it. I'm so sorry. The letter went on to recount memories of our early days together, our first date, the night we danced in the rain, the way we used to dream about growing old side by side. By the time I finished reading, my chest felt tight. I folded the letter and set it aside, unsure of how to process the emotions swirling within me. A few weeks later, Sarah asked to meet. Just to talk, she said. No pressure. I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. We met at a park near the kids' school, a neutral space where neither of us could dominate the conversation. She looked different, tired, yes, but also softer, more vulnerable. She held a notebook in her hands, and as we sat down, she opened it to reveal pages filled with scribbled notes and reflections. I've been working on myself, she said quietly. Therapy has been hard, but it's helping. I've realized how much I let my insecurities dictate my actions. I was looking for validation in all the wrong places. I didn't respond right away, letting her words hang in the air. I know I've lost your trust, she continued, her voice breaking. And I don't expect to get it back overnight. But I want to be better. For you, for the kids, and for myself. She handed me the notebook. This is everything I've been working through. My therapist suggested I write it all down. My feelings, my mistakes, and what I'm learning about myself. I want you to see it, because you deserve to know that I'm not just saying I'm sorry. I'm trying to be better. I flipped through the pages, scanning her thoughts. It was raw, honest, and filled with the kind of self-awareness I hadn't seen in her before. I don't know what the future holds, I said finally, my voice measured. But if you're serious about this, then keep doing the work. Not for me, but for you and the kids. They need a mother they can look up to. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. Thank you, Mark. That means more than you know. As I walked away that day, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and a faint glimmer of hope. Sarah's journey of redemption was her own to navigate, but for the first time, I believed she might actually succeed. The day I handed over the file on Alex to the authorities was the day I felt a semblance of control return to my life. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. Alex wasn't just a man who had wormed his way into my wife's life. He was a predator, preying on vulnerable people, leaving destruction in his wake. It started with a call to a detective I knew through a friend. Detective Miller had been with the department for over 20 years and had a reputation for getting results. When I explained the situation, he listened carefully, his tone professional but empathetic. Bring me what you've got, he said. If this guy is as dirty as you say, we'll make sure he pays. Sitting in Miller's office a few days later, I laid out the evidence Chloe had gathered. Photos, financial records, and testimony from other victims Chloe had managed to track down. Miller flipped through the file, his expression growing grimmer with each page. This guy's a real piece of work, he muttered, shaking his head. We've had reports on someone matching his description, but nothing concrete. This might be the break we need. Hearing those words brought a strange sense of satisfaction. For weeks, I had felt powerless, a bystander in my own life. Now, I was taking action, not just for myself, but for everyone Alex had hurt. The arrest came swiftly. Miller and his team caught Alex at a hotel where he was staying under a fake name. I wasn't there to see it, but Miller called me afterward to share the news. We've got him, he said. And thanks to your file, we've got enough to keep him behind bars for a long time. I felt a wave of relief, but it was tempered by the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Alex's downfall didn't erase the betrayal or heal the wounds he had inflicted, but it was a step toward closure. A few weeks later, the trial began. I debated whether or not to attend, but in the end, I decided I needed to see it through. Sitting in the courtroom, I watched as Alex was brought in, his once confident demeanor replaced by a look of sullen defiance. The prosecutor laid out the case against him, calling witness after witness to testify. Each story painted a picture of a man who had manipulated and defrauded his way through life, leaving devastation in his wake. Women who had trusted him, business partners he had swindled, families he had torn apart. Sarah wasn't there, and I was glad. She didn't need to see this. It was my choice to stand as a silent witness to the consequences of her choices and Alex's manipulations. When it was my turn to testify, I stood before the court, my hand steady despite the emotions churning inside me. I spoke about how Alex had infiltrated my life, how his lies and deceit had shattered my family. I'm not here for revenge, I said, my voice firm. I'm here because people like him can't be allowed to continue hurting others. He's a danger to anyone who crosses his path, and he needs to be held accountable. Alex sat there, his expression unreadable. As the gavel finally came down, the judge handed him a lengthy sentence, ensuring he wouldn't have the chance to harm anyone else for a long time. As I left the courtroom that day, I felt an odd mix of emotions, satisfaction, certainly, but also a lingering sadness. Alex's downfall was a victory, but it came at a cost I was still paying. Back home, I sat with Mia and Caleb, helping them with their homework. They didn't know the details of what had happened, and they didn't need to. All they needed to know was that their father was here, steady and unwavering, ready to guide them through whatever came next. That night, as I tucked them into bed, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. Justice had been served. And while the scars of betrayal remained, I was determined to focus on the future, on healing, on rebuilding, and on being the father my children deserved. The first morning without Sarah felt strange. The house seemed quieter, almost too quiet, as if it was mourning her absence. Yet, there was an odd sense of clarity in the air, like a fog had lifted. I knew this was our new normal, and it was up to me to make it work for the kids and for myself. Mia and Caleb adjusted quicker than I expected. Children have a way of adapting, of finding stability in the small, familiar routines. Breakfast became our little ritual, pancakes on Sundays, cereal on busy weekdays. Mia insisted on helping, her tiny hands fumbling with the whisk, while Caleb became the self-appointed juice master, ensuring everyone's glass was filled. Their laughter in the mornings was a lifeline, a reminder that life didn't stop just because mine had hit a roadblock. They didn't ask many questions about Sarah at first, which I was grateful for. But I knew the day would come when I'd have to explain, and I dreaded it. The evenings were the hardest. After the kids were asleep, the silence crept in, bringing with it memories I'd rather not dwell on. I'd sit in the living room, staring at the empty armchair where Sarah used to curl up with a book, her laughter once filling the space. I threw myself into work during the day, staying late at the office to avoid coming home to the emptiness. My colleagues noticed the change but didn't press. They probably assumed I was just another overworked dad. But slowly, I began to build a new rhythm. Weekends became sacred time with Mia and Caleb. We visited the park, baked cookies, and built elaborate pillow forts in the living room. These moments, though simple, were a balm for the ache in my chest. Then came the first question. Daddy, when is Mommy coming back? Mia asked one evening as I was tucking her into bed. Her wide eyes searched mine, filled with innocent curiosity. I paused, my heart clenching. Mommy's taking some time to figure things out, I said carefully. But she loves you very much. Mia seemed satisfied with that, snuggling into her stuffed rabbit. But Caleb, older and more perceptive, wasn't so easily convinced. Is she coming back at all? He asked the next day while we were playing catch in the yard. I set the ball down, crouching to his level. I don't know, buddy, I admitted. But no matter what happens, you and Mia will always have me. That won't change. He nodded slowly, his eyes searching mine for reassurance. Okay, Dad. Those moments were tough, but they were also a reminder of why I couldn't afford to falter. My kids needed me more than ever, and I was determined not to let them down. As the weeks turned into months, I started to find myself again. I reconnected with old friends, men I drifted away from during the years of marital busyness. They dragged me out to dinners, sports games, even a hiking trip. I resisted at first, but eventually, I found myself laughing again, enjoying the simple pleasure of camaraderie. I also rediscovered hobbies I had long forgotten. I dusted off my guitar, the one Sarah had bought me for our 5th anniversary, and began playing again. The music, once a shared passion between us, became a source of personal solace. The kids thrived in this new chapter. Caleb joined the school soccer team, and Mia discovered a love for painting. Our evenings were often filled with the hum of activity. Caleb practicing drills in the yard, Mia proudly displaying her latest masterpiece. Still, Sarah's absence was felt. The empty seat at the dinner table, the moments when I caught myself reaching for my phone to text her, only to remember there was no need. The pain didn't disappear, but it dulled over time, becoming a part of the background rather than the foreground. One evening, Mia handed me a crayon drawing she had made. It was of our family, me, Caleb, and her. Sarah wasn't in the picture. "Do you miss Mommy?" I asked gently. Mia nodded. "But I like our family, too," she said, her words simple yet profound. Her words stayed with me that night. Life without Sarah wasn't what I had planned, but it was our reality. And despite everything, we were finding our way. Healing isn't a straight line. It twists and turns, doubling back on itself when you least expect it. Some days, I felt like I was finally moving forward. Other days, I found myself staring at old photos, wondering if things could ever have been different. It was during one of these moments, as I sorted through the remnants of our life together, that Sarah called. Her voice was tentative, unsure, but there was a strength beneath it I hadn't heard in months. "Mark," she said after a long pause, "I think it's time we talked. Not about us, but about the kids. They need both of us. And I want to do better for them." Her words surprised me. It wasn't the plea for reconciliation I had half expected. Instead, it was a recognition of the shared responsibility we still had, no matter what had happened between us. We agreed to meet at a cafe near the park where Caleb's soccer games were held. I arrived first, sipping a coffee and watching the world go by, trying to steel myself for whatever this conversation might bring. When Sarah walked in, she looked different. Not just physically, though the strain of the past months was evident in her face, but in her demeanor. She seemed humbled, grounded, a far cry from the woman who had once laughed so freely with Alex at that restaurant. "Thanks for meeting me," she said as she sat down, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of tea. I nodded, waiting for her to speak. "I've been thinking a lot about the kids," she began. "They deserve stability, love, and to know that despite everything, we're still a team when it comes to them." Her words were measured, careful. I could tell she'd rehearsed them. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," she continued, her eyes meeting mine. "I know that's something I have to earn if it's even possible, but I want to be there for Mia and Caleb. I want to be the kind of mother they can look up to." For a moment, I didn't respond. I studied her face, searching for any hint of insincerity. But all I saw was a woman who seemed genuinely remorseful and determined to make amends. "I appreciate that," I said finally, my voice steady. "The kids do need you, but they also need consistency. If you're going to be in their lives, you have to be all in. No more disappearing acts. No more excuses." Sarah nodded, her grip on the teacup tightening. "I understand. I've been working with my therapist on how to be more present, more accountable. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." We talked for over an hour, discussing schedules, boundaries, and how we could co-parent effectively. It wasn't an easy conversation. There were moments when old wounds threatened to reopen, but it was productive. As we were wrapping up, Sarah hesitated, her eyes downcast. "Mark," she said softly, "I want you to know that I regret everything. Not just the affair, but the way I let myself drift away from you, from us. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say that." Her words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. I took a deep breath, choosing my response carefully. "I appreciate your honesty," I said, "but forgiveness isn't something I can give you right now. Maybe someday, but not today. What I can do is support you in being a better mother to our kids. That's what matters most right now." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you, Mark. That means more than you know." As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was no closure, not really, but there was a sense of resolution. Sarah was taking steps to heal, to be a better person. And while that didn't erase the pain she'd caused, it was a start. That evening, I sat down with Mia and Caleb to tell them that Mommy would be spending more time with them. Their faces lit up, their excitement palpable. "Soon?" Mia asked eagerly. "Soon," I said, smiling at her enthusiasm. "We're figuring it out." Caleb, ever the quiet observer, looked at me carefully. "Are you and Mommy okay now?" I hesitated, then crouched down to his level. "We're working on being good parents," I said. "That's the most important thing, right?" He nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. Later that night, as I watched them sleep, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't perfect, and it never would be, but it was enough for now. A chance to heal, not just for myself, but for my family. Moving forward isn't about forgetting the past. It's about learning to live with it and finding the strength to build something new. For me, moving forward began with small steps. Each day, I focused on what I could control, my children, my work, and the person I wanted to become. The kids adapted remarkably well. Sarah kept her promise, showing up consistently for Mia and Caleb. She picked them up from school twice a week and joined us for family game nights once a month. It was awkward at first, navigating this new dynamic, but the kids were happy, and that was enough to keep us both trying. For my part, I learned to focus on the moments that mattered. Caleb's soccer games, where his determination on the field made me swell with pride. Mia's art exhibitions at school, where she'd excitedly pull me toward her brightly colored drawings. These were the moments I lived for, the ones that reminded me life was still full of joy. But there were also the quiet victories, the ones that came when I least expected them. Like the first time I laughed, a real, unguarded laugh, at one of Caleb's corny jokes. Or the first time I played my guitar without thinking about Sarah's betrayal, letting the music carry me somewhere lighter, freer. Then there was the trip. It started as an idea, something to break up the monotony of life and give the kids a new adventure. We decided on a road trip, just the three of us, to the mountains. Mia was ecstatic, already planning the snacks and playlists. Caleb, ever the planner, mapped out hiking trails and campfire spots. As we packed the car and set off, I felt a strange sense of excitement. It wasn't just about the destination. It was about the journey, about creating memories that belonged solely to us. The mountains were breathtaking, their peaks dusted with snow, the air crisp and invigorating. We spent our days hiking, exploring, and laughing around the campfire at night. Under a blanket of stars, we talked about everything and nothing, our conversations flowing with the ease of people who truly loved and trusted each other. One evening, as we sat by the fire, roasting marshmallows, Caleb turned to me. "Dad," he said, his voice thoughtful, "I think we're going to be okay." I smiled at him, my heart swelling with pride. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "I think we are." That trip became a turning point for us. It was a reminder that no matter what had happened, we were still a family. And as long as we had each other, we could face whatever challenges came our way. Back home, I began to focus more on myself. I started running in the mornings, finding solace in the rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement. I reconnected with old friends, rebuilding the relationships I had let slip during the chaos of the past year. Sarah and I found a new balance. We weren't friends, not yet, maybe not ever, but we were partners in parenting. She continued her therapy, and I saw the changes in her. She was more present, more engaged, and for the first time, I believe she truly wanted to make amends. One evening, after dropping the kids off at her place, she stopped me at the door. "Mark," she said, her voice hesitant, "thank you for giving me a chance to be part of their lives again. I know it couldn't have been easy." It wasn't, I admitted, meeting her gaze. But it's what they needed. And that's all that matters. As I drove home that night, I felt a sense of closure. Sarah's journey was her own, and while I couldn't erase the pain she had caused, I could choose to let go of the bitterness. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. There were still hard days, moments when the past threatened to resurface. But those moments became fewer and farther between. One day, as I stood in the yard, watching Mia and Caleb play, I realized something. I was happy. Not the fleeting kind of happiness that comes from distractions or temporary fixes, but a deep, abiding contentment. We had been through the fire, my family and I. We had been tested in ways I never imagined, but we had come out stronger. And as I stood there, the sun warm on my face, I allowed myself to hope. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like a gift, a chance to start anew, to build a life filled with love, resilience, and the unshakable bond of family.